Interesting.
Hello, this is the Metropolitan Council meeting, this April 10th, 2024. I'm Charlie Zelli, Chair. Welcome, everyone. And I somehow think the lights feel more like stage lights because everybody looks so great. Must be.
Start singing or something.
Yeah, well, you know, the song and dance routines will be deferred till later. Anyway, welcome. This is a regular meeting, and we have an agenda, which I just want to point out was revised, I think, even earlier today. The community development business item relating to the city of North Oaks, at the city's request, they've asked that this business item be postponed. And, oh, look, see now.
Happy hour.
Now it's getting really dark.
It's like
Somewhere right in the
Broadway.
middle, right?
Now it's time to go to bed. Oh, no, it's not. Anyway, this agenda has been modified at the City of North Oaks' request to have that deferred to a later meeting, which we were happy to accommodate. So that, with that change, the agenda is as it stands with a couple of important information items afterwards. So unless there's an objection, I will deem the agenda approved. But we do need to vote on the council minutes, which were sent out in advance from our last council meeting of March 27th, 2024. So if there's any additions or subtractions or questions, now is a good time. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, those minutes are approved. Now we have an opportunity for members of the public or interested parties to address the council on items that are not on the agenda for today. And normally we have a sheet of paper out in advance for people to sign up. We may have slipped on a piece of paper, but this is an invitation. If anybody would like to address the council for 3 minutes, come forward if you'd like. Great, then come forward and state your name, and you have 3 minutes, and welcome.
Hi, council members and Councilmember Lilligren. Thank you for having me today. My name is Ryan Knox, and I'm here to speak to you on behalf of both my family's business and the business owners on Lyndale Avenue South. Road construction on Lyndale is slated to start in 2026, and we are the people who will be affected most by the new road design. My family's business has been in the Lynn Lake area for 40 years. Our jewelry store serves clients from all across the metro area, and the overwhelming majority of our customers use on-street parking. Our group, Vibrant Lyndale, has spoken with over 100 business owners on our street, and we have heard one thing very loud and very clear. Removing on-street parking will be a significant detriment to our businesses. On-street parking is not only used by our patrons, but is also needed for daily deliveries for larger supply trucks that will have no reasonable place to unload parking or to unload when parking is removed. If you didn't already know, Lyndale's parking may be removed to accommodate dedicated bus lanes for Route 4. Metro Transit's Route 4 serves commuters for most of the day along Lyndale Avenue. I want to make it clear that we have no issue whatsoever with our transit commuters. We fully support them, and we fully support the subsidy that our tax dollars contribute to keep transit costs low. With that said, Route 4 is not coming anywhere close to meeting its ridership performance standards in either the pre- or post-COVID eras. Met Council's transit finance reports show during the pre-COVID era from 2015 to 2019, ridership on Route 4 had dropped an astounding 22%. The data also shows during the same time that Route 4's in-service hours had not changed. It gets worse. When comparing the most recent available 2021 data, we see an overwhelming loss of 65% of riders from 2015's peak. Now, of course, I realize that 2020 and 2021 were different times. It is undeniable that we both live and currently live in a different world because of COVID. With that reality, there are now thousands of Minnesotans who work from home who do not require bus transportation like they did in the past. Thus, my point. our 1 mile stretch of Lindale does not need a dedicated bus lane. The ridership isn't there. It was already declining pre-COVID, and the existing route is serving its commuters just fine. I am asking the council to study Route 4's ridership for themselves. I am also asking the council to analyze the loss in transit commuters due to working from home. I am lastly asking the council if a dedicated bus lane on only a single mile stretch of Route 4's 15 miles is appropriate, because that single mile of Lindale is the home to over 100 small and independent businesses who rely on that street parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Did I see another hand? Welcome. Come and you could state your name and address the council.
Thank you, council members. My name is Andrea Corbin. I'm on the board of both the Uptown Association and the Lynn Lake Association. I own a flower shop on the 2800 block of Lindale Avenue. In the last 8 months, I have connected with over 150 businesses on the Lindale and Hennepin Avenue corridors, and I speak on their behalf. I urge you to listen to the small and minority-owned businesses in the underserved in Uptown. We have been left out of financial recovery programs and incentives and stripped of the tools and access we need to help our businesses succeed. The faces of those businesses are hardworking individuals full of grit and a love for our city and the community we serve. Vision $0 are being spent on analyzing our heaviest used and busiest corridors, which is translating to federal dollars, putting our main arteries in our city under construction all at the same time. This is a recipe for economic disaster. Building values are plummeting on Hennepin and Lindale, and we've lost thousands of dollars in tax revenue. And now building owners are facing grave challenges with trying to keep their properties insured in this area. We cannot proceed with a plan that was created in the past while projections have shifted dramatically from what was expected. Everything has changed. Are we changing with it? Our economic stability has been shattered with civil unrest and boarded up buildings that remain in our corridors and are a stern daily reminder. The opioid and unhoused crisis unfolds on our doorsteps, and trash and graffiti are challenges we face before opening our stores every morning. The subway 2 doors down from my shop has been held up at gunpoint 4 times in the last 3 months. The employees, all minorities, come in shaking and scared to death, asking me to call 911 for them. This is our everyday reality. According to downtownrecovery.com, a website tracked by the University of Toronto, we are number 64. That's 2 from the bottom of the 66 cities being tracked for recovery according to a real-time traced mobile phone data. And we're at 56% of the activity compared to numbers in 2019. A safe and accessible place to park is at the top of every patron's mind who frequents our shops. We are driving both businesses and patrons outside the city with these well-meaning but unrealistic decisions to eliminate parking. How is this curbing our emissions or encouraging an EV future? I urge you to visit these small businesses. Behind every business is a family and their employees' families. Speak with those families and their lived experiences before making the decisions that will change and impact our city forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I see a third? Welcome.
My name is Siyawish Rahimi. I own a couple of small businesses in the same neighborhood that Andrea and Ryan discussed with you guys. They already explained our mission to you guys, but I'm on the other side of it, that I own a business, and my businesses are driven by not the area that people live there, so they would take buses and bicycles to come to my store. They come from Duluth, they come from all sorts of different places, Mankato, they come from suburb. I'm a destination. So when these people call my stores and they want to wonder, do you have a parking spot and is it safe to be in your neighborhood? So by losing parking, that definitely is going to devastate my business. The other part of it is majority of the kids that I hire, they all come from Augsburg College, they come from Hamlin College and everything else. None of those guys, take a bus or take a bicycle. They all, for some reason, have a car. They're coming in, so I need to accommodate the parking and basically keep those people employed. And what my concern is, what's happening in Hennepin Avenue, I'm sure maybe some people are aware of it. They put a dedicated bus line there, and lots of businesses have already taken off, and I haven't seen any of them coming back. So I'm hoping that whatever decision is being made to take care of that street will be something that does not put business owners like me out of business. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? Welcome, come forward.
Hello, my name is Judy Longbottom. Thank you for an opportunity to share the financial impact we experienced when parking choices were reduced at our small business. We've been very lucky to be small business owners on Hennepin Avenue for over 21 years. Our business is the UPS store. It's a franchise business. We've been located at 3 different locations over the 21 years, all of them on the once vibrant Hennepin Avenue corridor. Each location had dedicated parking. We moved the business to its current location 2 years ago, and we reduced our parking by half from our previous location. We now share 18 spots with Potbelly Sandwich and 24 independent stylists. Our business revenue dropped 11% the first year after the move. We are currently at almost a 9% reduction in our second year. And to help put this in perspective, our Uptown location for the entire 20-plus years of our ownership had consistently ranked number 2 in the state, month over month. On our last ranking report, we were 12th in the state. Our second location in Edina on 74th and France and the other 57 UPS stores, which I get reports on, have on average shared and enjoyed a 5% increase year over year. So there's some real comparable data for this business model. I have been told by my long-term customers how incredibly frustrated they are with the new location due to the parking reduction and limited off-street parking options. We currently employ 9 individuals in Uptown. I share parking with a nearby local business for the staff to park at for 2 reasons: to avoid them using the 18 spots we've got, and to ensure they won't get frustrated and go find a job somewhere else. My business is used by every demographic in our city, including the elderly, handicapped, some who rely exclusively on driving a car to complete their errands. We need our city officials to bear witness to the loss of businesses that left during and after the completion of the first significant reconstruction of Hennepin Avenue between Lakewood Cemetery and Lake Street, where parking was reduced or eliminated in sections so dramatically. We need to pause and evaluate the examples we already have on display and correct course wherever we possibly can as we move forward through the next construction project scheduled for the future. I fear that we will have the same devastating outcome to loss of businesses, jobs, and amenities these closed businesses provided if we proceed without some course changes. Will the city of Minneapolis look for solutions going forward, like, for example, the 50th and France retail corridor, where retail businesses are thriving and providing a dependable tax revenue stream, jobs, vibrancy, and necessary amenities for their community? I sincerely hope the answer is yes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other commenters? Can I have a show of hands up? We have time for one more, but are there others beyond? Is it just me? Come forward. Welcome.
Okay, hi.
You're the wrap-up. That's right.
All right. My name is Brian. I work right in the area where everybody is speaking about. I haven't done a lot of homework and have a lot of information about the demographics on Hennepin and whatever. I just see it on a layman's terms, what happened there, and I would hate to see it happen on Lyndale in that corridor. Having my job there, I commute there from Edina every day. I live in Edina, I work there. And I can't see not driving there. The parking is a little challenging already. I really think it needs to be reconsidered and reworked because of so many things at stake. I talk to people that come into the shop and tell them that the parking might be, jeopardized. And everyone, I've been there for going on 5 months, everyone that I talk to, and it's a busy place, I talk to many people every day, are like, well, what would we do? Where are we going to park? How do I get here? I don't know. And one individual in all this time has come into the shop, entered via riding a bike to get there. And I'm thinking, okay, I just don't understand how this is going to benefit the community, the vicinity. It's like just going to ruin businesses. I mean, I know our clients would cease and desist, and so I'm just here to put in my 2 cents and say I don't really understand why it would even be considered with other bike lanes and bus lanes so close already, I think that's about all I have to say, and that a lot of people that I've met agree with me, but I'm just here to sort of voice the everyday common voice, because they don't know about the council or whatever. So I'm just here to say a lot of people feel the same way and to consider that. And that area has had its problems. It seems like it's trying very hard to rejuvenate and come back from trying times, and this would just be the last shot. I think it would kill it, for the economy of the whole area and the city. It would just sort of radiate. So that's how I feel, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you I'm sorry, so I think that's the close of the public comment period. Thank you, appreciate all your comments. Before we just get to our business agenda, I just will make one just quick comment that but maybe it's something everybody knows, that we're the Metropolitan Council, and the Hennepin Avenue Reconstruction Project is a project of the city of Minneapolis, and the Lindale is in the planning phase undertaken by Hennepin County. Those are the government entities kind of in charge, so appreciate it.
I did register to speak. Can I speak?
I'm sorry, we are at a point, I did call for all hands, so if I missed you, I mean, we have 3 minutes if you'd like to.
Well, I'll just quickly talk.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Melissa Freiberger, and I live in the Tangletown neighborhood in Minneapolis, off of Diamond Lake Road. Couple things is my daughter was carjacked in September of this year in our neighborhood. And so the idea of her like biking places and, or myself, after a certain time would just not even be possible due to the crime in the city. But also on Bryant Avenue, I know that they have spoken about how on Move Minnesota, they believe that 1,000 bikes travel on Bryant Avenue every day. I don't know if I've seen 10 bikes when I drive down on Bryant, and I drive down there quite a bit. So that's deceptive of the actual numbers. But also, in speaking to what my neighbors are talking about, a lot of my neighbors are really disappointed in the city of Minneapolis. And, our taxes, I mean, mine went up, $1,500 this year. And honestly, I mean, you need us in this city to make this city go, because our tax bracket is paying quite a bit. And also the businesses, they're paying it. And we're gonna be like New York City, everyone's gonna leave. This is real life stuff. And I am all about exercise, I love it. But bikes where when I had my kids, am I gonna put my, groceries in the Burley? I mean, that's just not feasible. So, I mean, I just would like you guys to really think about, we've got really cold weather, just the facts. And I think that, we all want a healthy community, but it has to be done in a very methodical way. So I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we're going to press on with first our consent business items. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yeah. And there you go. Yeah, no discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. The consent business agenda has been approved. We're on to the reports of the standing committees. And as I have previously mentioned, the one action from the Community Development Committee is deferred to a future council meeting. There are no reports from the Environment Committee, no reports from the Management Committee. There are 2 reports from the Transportation Committee. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2024-75 is regarding the approval of the Haywood Office Construction Services Contract. This project is a continuation of Haywood Campus Master Planning. It will upgrade the 1984 Haywood Office Tower to bring the building up to current building codes. Construction is anticipated to be underway from spring 2024 through fall of 2025. For all workspaces to be adequately performing. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the regional administrator to award and execute contract 24P005 with Versacon for Haywood Office Systems Upgrade Construction Project for necessary upgrades to the 1984 Haywood office in a not-to-exceed amount of $14,171,360.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Carter. Any other discussion, comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2024-99, same week, is regarding the authorization of grant agreements with Southwest Transit and MVTA. Council action is required for the regional administrator to execute agreements over $500,000. The requested action will allow the regional administrator to execute grant agreements with replacement service providers. Grant agreements proposed through this business item would enable capital projects that advance fleet electrification, modernize garage facilities, and complete customer and support facility projects advanced by the transit providers in the region. Financial support for these grants comes from the federal low or no emission grant program, regional solicitation funding, federal bus and bus facilities grant program, RTC, MVEST, and metro area transportation sales and use tax. For the projects identified in Table 1, MVTA has requested to use their available undesignated funding held in the council's authorized capital budget to complete these projects. These funds are available to MVTA to use at their discretion for eligible public transportation projects. All projects were approved for funding in the Q1 carry forward budget amendment that was approved by the council on March 27th. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the regional administrator to execute grant agreements with the replacement service providers or suburban transit providers as follows. To Southwest Transit for capital assistance for battery electric vehicle purchase and deployment in the amount of $2,001,604. To Minnesota Valley Transit Authority or MVTA for assistance on Phase 2 and 3 of the Burnsville Bus Garage Modernization Projects in the amount of $3.5 million and $4.96 million respectively, and to MVTA for the projects identified in Table 1 of the business item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions, comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. We have no other business before the council today, but 2 information items. And we're starting with our update on climate action work plan. And I think Lisa Barras and maybe Jeff Freeman or others are going to make this report. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff, you can join us over here too if you'd like.
I could.
We want to think that you work together, you know.
I got wrapped into this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. I'm Lisa Barajas, Executive Director of the Community Development Division and Executive Sponsor for the Council's Climate Work. And I'm really pleased to be in front of you today with some of our team members too on our coordinating team to talk about the work that we've been up to since you all adopted our Climate Action Work Plan. I think it was in December of 2022. So we have a lot to share with you today and certainly have a lot that we'd like to hear from you as well about what we're reporting, how we're reporting, if there's other things you'd like to say. But before we kick it off, I would like to give an opportunity for Councilmember Lindstrom to say a couple words.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of thoughts just to get things rolling here. First of all, thanks to my fellow council members who serve on the work group. And I gotta say, I think we are the funnest work group, the most fun, the most fun. We meet monthly, bright and early at 8 a.m. Yesterday, I think we talked about a lot of things, including Barney the dinosaur, came up a few times, and we have a good time. Just a little history for council members that may be on the newer side. 2020, 2021, we launched our work. We launched the work for the Climate Action Work Plan, and I'm excited to see this 2023, how we have just really put the pedal to the metal. As a council, there's a ton of work to do. This work plan identifies, I think it's 73 different actions for the council to take. And as will be described in the minutes ahead here, we've just done a tremendous amount of work in hiring new people and putting the teams together. I think that's one thing that really just stands out, is that in my time on the council, this has been the biggest cross-divisional work that I've been a part of, that I've witnessed. And I think you'll see that here in the next few minutes. So 2024 is going to be very exciting. We've got a lot of work to do. So I think we're ready we are hitting the ground running right now. So particularly as it relates to Imagine 2050. I think this cross-divisional aspect of the work is just going to continue through the guide. And that's my cue. That's like the Academy Awards. These guys talk long enough. So anyways, with that, I'll let these fine folks take it away.
Thank you, Councilmember. And before I kick it off, I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Brethheim. I'm a senior project coordinator with Metro Transit, and I work to support the coordination of the Climate Action Work Plan.
Good evening, council members, Chair Zelli. I am Jeff Freeman. I'm a sustainability manager within Metro Transit, and I will note that Laura is one of our new hires to further this effort. And she's went from an internship into a full-time position, so she carried us along the way.
Thank you. So to kick it off, as I think most of everyone in this room is aware, is that climate change impacts all of our council services. That's not just what we see every day, but what we also see within the systems that we're responsible for and planning for. So regional parks often see that too, and the flooding of our trail system in the recent years because of the drought, but we do see the impacts of freeze-thaw. We see it in the housing and energy bills. We see it in our wastewater services and access to our own facilities, and impacts in our transportation systems, whether it's the systems that we own and operate, like the transit system system itself, and having to reorient bus routes in response to inland flooding, not riverine flooding, but inland flooding, or issues we have with extreme heat and buckling on tracks, as well as our responsibility for planning for the regional transportation system and the highway network, where we see impacts all across the region. And that's not just here at the council, but we know our colleagues in our local government partners also experience those same impacts. And so we have undertaken this work to really focus on the council's operations and what we can do to make our own operations more resilient and to drive down our own emissions. So to that end, the council's climate vision as it's identified in our work plan is to reduce our contributions to greenhouse gas emissions in the region and to make our services and facilities resilient to the impacts of climate change. What Council Member Lindstrom noted before as the Barney square that we were talking about was a graph that we had shared about the council's emissions in the in comparison to other to state agencies as part of the governor's subcabinet on climate change, and we're the big purple square, or about 50% of those overall emissions in the state enterprise. So we know that we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of interest in our work, but we also know that our operations are a little bit different than our state agency partners in that work too. So there's a lot to go into that, but that doesn't mean there aren't eyes on our work. So our climate action work plan structure, if you're not familiar, but just to familiarize you with it a bit, is that it's organized around these 6 commitments that describe what our desired outcomes are for the climate action in our operations, as well as these larger 20 strategies that are tactics that will help implement those commitments. Many of those strategies are cross-divisional in nature. Some of those strategies are led by one division, and some of those strategies are partner divisions, but many of them often are enterprise-wide. And then we have many actions that help implement those strategies. And this is meant to be a 3 to 5 year plan. We did recognize, and some council members might recall our conversation, is that we really wanted to put things on the plate that we thought we could do even without those resources. But if resources were to become available, that we could pick up and go with that. And that's really been really fortunate that we've done that because of the different federal funding resources that have actually become available since the council has adopted this plan, that we've been able to pick up those strategies and actions already that are in your adopted plan and put those into action when we're making application for those resources. So thank you for your foresight in putting those actions in there and thinking a little bit bigger than just our current resources as well. Those commitments that I mentioned earlier are here on the slide, but really focusing and starting with centering our work around environmental justice principles, which you heard about last week, that we have brought that work that we've been doing in our climate work around environmental justice into our Imagine 2050 process and trying to expand upon that to not just be focused in climate, but to apply across all of the council's activities and early in the process, not just at the end stage when we're trying to select a project or a vendor to do the work. The second and third are really, you'll see these actions are really organized about focusing first on walking the talk. So in this place, in number 2, accelerating our own emissions reductions in operations. And then in number 3, then going through that partnership and using partnerships to accelerate regional emissions reductions. So you'll see that same structure for reducing risks and impacts of climate change in our own work on 4, and then in 5, partnering with others across the region to build regional resilience. And then our 6th one is really about staffing, and that our focus there is to ensure that we have the appropriate staff and the appropriate training to do the work that we're committed to, and that we continue to evolve that work as the state of the practice grows and technologies change around all of this work that we're doing. In 2023, we really focused on, as Councilmember Lindstrom noted, really building the structures to do this work and building our teams across the entire enterprise for doing this work. We established our coordinating team that has representatives from all of our different divisions in leadership work, and Laura is an excellent taskmaster in keeping us on track and ensuring that we're moving together in that work. And then we also really have been working with the climate work group as well, having that reestablished to help guide and monitor our work as we're going forward. We have established a whole lot of cross-divisional teams, work groups that were a part of the climate action work plan itself, where we identified the need that this is going to be an enterprise-wide strategy where we need staff to be working together on this. So we've established these 6 teams to get us started to implement those cross-divisional actions. kick those off in this last year and have them working together on the strategies that are within their specific designated areas. And then, of course, continuing to track our progress on this work. We've spent a lot of time this year building those structures to help us actually in as decentralized way as we are, to actually really centralize that reporting and monitoring so people understand where they can go to find who that point of contact is for that information, that we can get that information back and everyone can see how progress is occurring on all the different actions that we have initiated. So to get us into that, so what have we done so far besides all of that work is that we actually are taking off on the amount of work that we are getting started. You'll see on this slide on the left that we have, 2023 was the single largest action year that we had in the Climate Action Work Plan because we saw a lot of work that first either was already underway that we could enhance or work that we knew we could get started right away. So that's why you see in that chart on the left that 2023 has so many actions that are on track to are actually completed, which is great. Some that we have had to pause, but then you'll see going forward that we have additional actions that are scheduled in future years to start, so in 24 or 25, and then some ongoing actions that we have underway. We do already know that there are some obstacles, of course, to getting everything started that we had initially planned, and some of that is just the regular cadence of changes in staffing, and some of that is that we are actually hiring new staff for new positions that we didn't previously have, and it is an employees market. There's a lot of opportunities out there for employees, and so we're competing against a lot of different agencies for bringing, especially in climate work, it is kind of the hot place to be, so there's a lot of competition from a lot of agencies to bring staff on board, but we continue to be diligent in doing that work and getting our team staffed up for especially the new work that we have going forward. And that there are some areas that we're still working for, ensuring that we have the right leadership to lead different actions as we've had some staff changes. So we'll continue to work with our team on that. And then, of course, sometimes intensive legislative sessions take our leadership away from these types of work, so they have to dedicate to that. But getting back into those activities and also trying to balance new legislative direction with some of the actions that we have identified in our work plans are some of the work that we're doing within our divisions and some of our discussions as well in order to keep things moving forward. But we are making really strong progress on our priority 1 actions. So if you haven't, you don't read that climate action work plan every day like those of us that implement it. Priority 1 actions are those that we considered, those that are things that we could do that would have a big impact, that they didn't have a lot of barriers, but would have a big impact on our work overall, so that we should be getting those started. They also are actions, even if they weren't big impact, that they might be foundational so that we could complete other actions in the plan. So we have 26 of those actions that are considered priority 1, and we have 95% of those actions underway, which we are really pleased upon, especially because of the foundational nature of a number of those. Some of our commitments that we have, you'll see this just a little bit organized by our commitments now, actions by commitment, and they're not all not all commitments have the same number of actions. Some commitments only have a handful of actions, but really many of our commitments build around our existing work, while others we have spent time building new processes for these, and I think the environmental justice commitment is one of those, where we've spent a lot of time on building new processes and operationalizing what we mean by that in this over the course of this last year. Get to my right. Is it up to you now? I will turn it to Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Again, I'm Jeff Freeman. I'm going to talk about commitments 2 and 3, reducing emissions. We have, again, as Lisa reiterated earlier, that we are looking at our own emissions, which is through our operations. Our two big operations are obviously wastewater treatment and transit. But we also have a significant contribution, I think, that flies under the radar through Metro Mobility. The number of vehicles that we own and the amount of miles we put on them, close to 30 million miles, almost the same number of miles on the Metro Mobility fleet as we put on our transit fleet. And those are all mostly gasoline-powered vehicles due to how they operate, the operational convenience of being able to go to any filling station. So, get to the next. We do emit a large amount of greenhouse gases as a council. Again, we are one of the larger emitters in the region. 250,000 metric tons. It's down from about 350,000 metric tons back in 2008 when I started this work, working on climate registry reporting, where at that point in time, it was opening up utility bills one by one and going through this and trying to log our usage for the year and going, what am I doing and how did I get suckered into this? But when you look, and I always think that when we look at the metric tons of CO2e, it's always hard to compare. What does that mean? What does a metric ton look like? I mean, it's gas, we can't see it. How does it feel? And so we put some context in here by looking at homes and cars. 50,000 homes, on the average, that's what the council produces in its emissions. Or 56,000 cars driven for 1 year. I'm assuming that's 12,000 miles a day, or 12,000 miles a day, a year. Our emissions have been trending down. We were, like I said, back in 2000, this is from 2015, we're showing a number here that is 300,000 tons. And we started to see some numbers here, and if we're really interested, there's a slide that's hiding in the back of this presentation that gets into more detail on this. But it talks about some of the things that have changed, both transit and environmental services. We're expanding. We have done a lot of expansion in the last 15 years since we really started thinking about this, work hard. Population continues to grow. Wastewater treatment continues to be an ongoing expanding commodity. We've seen some ups and, so we've seen some peaks there in 2019 where we started to go up again. But what happened? We were A-line, some of the ABRT lines were coming into place. We were expanding our service. We're starting to see those things come into play. So then we had the pandemic and we fell down a bit. But most important, I think, on this graph, we're seeing that in 2023, as we've recovered, our number is still down. So we've done some good work. Some of this has been leveraged on the good work the utilities have done to reduce their emissions grid factor. From 2005, Excel and others in this region, our grid factor has gone from 825 kilograms per megawatt down to about just under 400. They've had a 50% reduction. And our work in this area is really taking their work and leveraging it, finding ways for us to reduce our consumption, leverages the reductions they've had within the grid. Am I on the right? Did I skip one? Did I skip one? I thought I did. All right. Council emissions by division. We can see here that where Metro Transit's in the green, environmental service is in light blue, and MTS, transportation services, is in the darker blue. Again, we talked about Metro Mobility 2019 pre-pandemic. That top little blue chunk is really had some growth when you look at where it was in 2015. We have an aging population. The service is high demand. It works well for those who use it. I don't see that demand changing for us. Environmental service, on the other hand, in their light blue, has made a number of changes to the operational improvements, process improvements that have reduced energy. As one of the larger electric energy consumers in the state of Minnesota, they've found ways to do things more efficiently, challenge technology to say that we're going to try something different than we've used in the past, and really are in the forefront of wastewater treatment within the U.S. as far as the amount of energy required to treat, what do you want to call it, cubic meter of water or sewage, let's call it that. And then transit, we're down here in the green. We see some of our growth in our up and down. Beyond some of the little bit of electrification we've seen with the zero emission bus fleet, we're also seeing improvements as we retire some of the old buses. A typical diesel bus, we buy it, it spends 10 to 12, 15 years with us. Typically it's 12. And it takes a while for that bus to get out of service. We're starting to see improvements in our fleet economy, where our newer, more modern buses. The nice thing about that, since I started tracking this, we've had like a 94% reduction in our tailpipe emissions as it comes to PM2 and NOx. Two criteria pollutants that people talk about all the time. Our buses are cleaner. I mean, you hear a lot of people complaining about the dirty buses, and you're like, it's not like it used to be. These buses are 95 percent cleaner. So that's something for us to be proud of as far as the work we've done within our maintenance folks as well as with our manufacturers. When we look at our fleet transition, 25% of the council's total emissions are from the revenue bus fleets. Transit at 13%. Again, Metro Mobility, Transit Services, which is primarily Metro Mobility, 12%. That's a lot of emissions. But when you put it into the context of the state, 0.025% of the state's emissions are Metro Transit buses. But I heard somebody at one time say that when you're talking about transit buses, it's not so much the emissions of the vehicle, it's the number of people who sit on the bus. And it's really true. We have a lot of opportunity to improve to make our service fit the needs of the region's inhabitants. And with that, we'll start to see some of the gains, more gains, as far as the impact of offsetting single occupancy vehicle emissions. So again, transit, we're really diving into the transit emissions here, and we're looking at Metro Transit in blue, Transportation Services in green, and seeing where we've been. And you can see that high point in 2019 for MTS. Transit's been floating along at around 70,000 tons for almost as long as I can remember. It's been in that plus or minus probably 10%. But all of a sudden, we came over post-pandemic, and our number is down below 50,000 tons. And part of it is, again, we've gotten rid of some of those older buses. We're making the move to zero emissions buses. Our ABRT ridership is high. Those routes have better mileage because of the buses are stopping with less they're not stopping every 2 blocks. They're traveling farther to stations where people tend to be a higher number of boardings at those stations. So we're seeing really good progress. We're hoping as as technology advances that we're going to see a replacement for that little bus in the middle there that looks like a Metro Mobility bus. But right now that doesn't exist in an economical fashion. That guy, the electric version of what we see there, is close to $400,000 and it's nowhere near cost competitive. Highlight 2, reducing our own energy emissions. We've done a couple of key things. We've added some renewable energy within our facilities and other bus shelters. We have geothermal wells, substantial number of geothermal wells at 3 facilities. We have geothermal wells at 3 other facilities. We've participated in community solar gardens. 3 of those gardens are hosted at ES facility, wastewater treatment plants. If any of you remember Jason Willett, who was back in 2010, 2012, was the council's town crier for renewable energy. He was out there and trying to get us into places where we weren't really sure we should go, but we did, and we've benefited from that. Put together community solar gardens that were specific for government entities, which were, some of us have followed the community solar garden saga with the PUC. It's amazing how many public agencies are involved in community solar garden and the impact they're talking about. A small change in the reimbursement rate will have on their budgets. The other part of it is reducing our energy consumption, energy conservation. We are probably 85% LED lighting. We continue to do a couple thousand fixtures a year. We just finished up relamping the pedestrian walk-ups to the Green Line at the Green Line corridor, which was a huge improvement for us because we were, for some reason or other, the platforms were LED, but the walk-ups were metal halide. Now we have higher quality light, less energy involved. Nice project for us to build off of it. It helps us not just in our energy, but in our ridership, our sense of security and safety. And with that, I'll turn it over to Laura, who's going to talk about adaptation.
Thanks, Jeff. So I'm going to talk about commitments 4 and 5, which are commitments about adapting to a changing climate. Commitment 4 is that we will reduce the risks and impacts of climate change hazards to our facilities and services. And commitment 5 is that we'll support and collaborate with partners to advance regional climate adaptation efforts. So looking at it from a regional perspective as well. In terms of measuring and tracking adaptation efforts, we're in a little different place than we are when it comes to mitigation efforts. Like Jeff has been saying, we have about 15 years worth of our emissions data, but when it comes to adaptation, we don't have that sort of data to build off of. So it's a very complex process to measure our ability to adapt to climate change, especially because of our diverse operations as an agency. We need to come together and figure out what those adaptation measures look like in many different perspectives. So how we're doing that work now is we've created a group called the Climate Risk and Vulnerability Group, which is led by Kathy Matter in Risk Management and Business Continuity. And that group is a cross-divisional group that works to address adaptation on a council-wide scale. So the group works to create a common understanding of what climate risk impacts and opportunities look like for the council. The group also works to leverage some of our existing tools. The council has done adaptation work ranging from the climate vulnerability assessment that was done in 2018 to some of our tools like localized flood mapping and extreme heat mapping. So those tools are available to us to build a foundation on. And we can also bring together key teams from many divisions. So currently on that team, we have staff from business continuity and regional administration, emergency management and ES, asset management and transit, the housing group in CD, and operations and MTS, all coming together to talk about the different ways to adapt all of our diverse operations to climate change. The group is also looking to how we can plan proactively and use future climate projections to address these impacts. Historically, many groups across the country have used historic data to plan for climate adaptation, so it's a new direction. There's a lot of available research to understand how we can use future climate projections to have a better understanding of how climate change can impact our operations, both from an acute sense of acute events that may happen to a long-term chronic process that may impact our operations. And I'm going to pass it over to Lisa to talk about one specific project.
Right, thank you. This project highlight is actually about our localized flood mapping tool. Many of you may be familiar with the work we've already done in creating this tool. It really was built off of some models that we had seen in Europe, especially in the Netherlands and other kind of below sea level countries, and how they manage water on their landscape. So we really looked to some of those countries to figure out how we could assess climate vulnerability around inland flooding in ways that we hadn't seen done in the US. We see a lot of sea level rise assessments, and that's not an issue here. If it is an issue here, then we've got bigger issues. So thankfully, we don't need to do that. But the work that we did there was really, at the regional scale, at all 3,000 square miles of this region, and took us a couple of years to get through both developing the model and then building that, but really provided us with a really great screening tool. And as our local government partners started putting the practice, they're like, actually, this really helps us a lot, because then we don't have to do that modeling up front ourselves, that we can say, oh, this is an issue, and then we can ask, we go to work with our engineers, and we can go dig in a little bit deeper on some of these things. So it was a really great screening tool, but some of the things that we're looking to do going forward is to evolve this tool and to build upon the work that we've already done, and to bring in new available data, projections, and other information that might actually help build out things that we didn't have the capabilities of doing at that time. And that includes things like including local sewer system capacity, which we didn't have that capability to include in the when we started this work back in 2015 or 16. But not only does this local flood mapping tool evolution help provide us with additional information that will be critical for our own operations, we've heard a lot from local governments how helpful this tool would be for them, especially those local governments that don't have big staff teams. So as they're starting to think about a new project, or a repaving or redoing a road within their community, it helps them think through how they might scope a project before they put it out for bid and really think about what they want to see in that. especially as they're thinking about other methods that would be more climate adaptive as we think about our continuing growing wetter landscape that we have in front of us. So as a part of that, the funding that the council had put aside in for 2024 to support climate implementation, we had an internal process for our working teams to identify projects that could utilize those funds to get going right away. And this was one of those projects, so we're getting started here in this next year to begin doing that next kind of version 2.0, if you will, of this tool, including hiring a new staff person to make this that part, core part of their work. So we're really excited about this, and hopefully in the coming year, we'll be reporting back to you on what we have found and where we're at in this work as well.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'll be talking now about commitment 1, which is our environmental justice commitment. And we also brought this up at the Committee of the Whole meeting last week. And this reads, we'll incorporate environmental justice principles as we plan, implement, and evaluate our climate work. So right now we're working to embed environmental justice in our work and creating processes to really actualize these EJ commitments as we carry out our climate work. The first step in that was to identify environmental justice concerns within the Climate Action Work Plan itself, and we did that when we wrote the plan. So you can see in the image at the bottom of the screen there's a little yellow box around an icon, and that icon is what we refer to as the environmental justice flag within the plan. So there are a number of actions in the plan that have that flag, and that means that when we implement those, we need to have special consideration for environmental justice concerns. So we're in good shape with that already, in that we've identified areas in the plan that are really important to be considering environmental justice as they're being implemented. The next step of this process is to create those processes that will address environmental justice as we implement this plan. There are not very many agencies nationally that have explicitly incorporated environmental justice into their climate work. So the council is on the leading edge of that as we have made this first commitment to center environmental justice in climate work. And the way that we're going about creating these processes for how to operationalize environmental justice is we've started by developing what we've called the Environmental Justice Playbook. And this project is at the very early stages. We've just completed this with assistance from an external consultant, and it creates a high-level awareness and some suggested processes for how to embed environmental justice into our climate planning work. It really contextualizes what environmental justice means beyond, for example, the EPA's definition of environmental justice, the federal definitions of environmental justice, in a way that makes it specific to our region and to our work as the council. And so currently, like I said, this is in the very early stages. We're working to roll out the playbook to key stakeholders across the council and make sure it's aligned with the other equity and environmental justice work that we do. It's also aligned with our Imagine 2050 EJ work. The climate action plan's efforts really laid the foundation for what is now happening through environmental justice in Imagine 2050, and the staff teams in both of those areas work very closely together, and some of the same people are shared among those efforts, so we're very aligned in that way.
Thanks, Laura. So I'll talk about our Commitment 6 about expanding staffing and training. As we talked about earlier, having enough staff to do the work as well as having staff trained up to do the work is really important, especially as the work continues to evolve and there's new information or new technologies. We got to ensure that our existing staff know how to do the work as well. So one of the elements that we did this year as well is establish a workforce, an enterprise-wide workforce and development team that is really focused on that and coordinating our work, while hiring managers and leaders within each of our divisions obviously are responsible for hiring each of those staff. There's a lot that we can learn from one another as we're building out these teams, especially in an area where we have a lot of new roles that we're considering, and so we can learn from one another in our work and sharing how we create these positions, what we might be having those positions do, how those teams might be those staff might be working with one another. So we're building job descriptions and position requirements that actually align with one another and actually can support this enterprise-wide type of work. And we're building teams that can do this across the council. rather than, me sitting by myself and trying to think of like, what would be a good skill for an energy manager to have? I can talk to Jeff and say, what do you think, Jeff? You have some of these on your team. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to really learn from one another and to build some of these positions together where we see that they would be advancing a lot of this work. One of the things that we are advancing this year is providing some initial staff training for our existing staff through this Envision Sustainable Infrastructure training that will be delivering that sometime this summer, I believe, or some additional work that we want to lay foundationally before we jump into that. But have staff from leadership levels, decision-making levels, and implementation levels from all of our divisions as a part of that work, as a part of that training, and something that we'll continue to assess how much rolling it out for additional staff in the future, as well as working with our internal training teams on other things that we might be doing internally to set some foundations for all of our staff across the council on what the council's direction is and how it impacts in our work, whether that's very broadly at the climate level or even things like internal training on how to use the EJ playbook, for example, would be another example of that. The other thing that we're looking at is really building and identifying those gaps in our existing workforce. We have a lot of things on our plates for our work plans already this year, and as we think about not just the volume of resource that we have available, but the skills that we have available to do that. And that helps us better understand whether we need to continue to invest in that professional development or we just need to have more bodies in the room to do the work. So as you start to hear more about proposed budgets this year, you may also hear more about additional staff resources that may be requested as part of those budget presentations and conversations this year that are related to supporting that climate work and building out our teams to do this work. We are on track to meeting this commitment, and we're continuing to do this work. I know that hiring managers from across the council that have been involved in this work have been really excited to see that there's some shared learning that we can do here, but also that we can work together on how we shape and frame these positions when we're going out for hiring, and that we have a lot of opportunity to just learn from one another and not replicate or be redundant in our work. And then as our team members have mentioned several times, that a lot of our work really is aligned and has led to a lot of the broader regional conversations that you've been hearing in Imagine 2050. We intentionally started the Climate Action Work Plan, or intended to start developing the Climate Action Work Plan way back in 2020. We got a little waylaid by some, global issues. But when we were able to get back on track and really get into writing and focusing on Climate Action Work Plan, the intent really was to get the council's operations and work so that we could learn from this activity and really think about what role then we can play at the region. We had been hearing from local governments, especially how much they look for us for partnership, but also for support in implementing their own plans. So really getting ourselves organized and coordinated really put us in a great position then to be ready to jump into those regional conversations around what can we do around climate together. Especially when we could all speak, just knowing what each other are doing across the council, that I could speak at least at a superficial level, like, oh, I know that Transit's working on this. Let me get you to the right person on that. Or that we might be able to make some connections to really drive some of those innovative ideas that our local partners have, really drive those forward. So looking ahead, we are really looking to just accelerate this work further. This last year was really about building that foundation we knew that we needed to have in place. And sometimes, as my partner in environmental services, Lisa Thompson, says often, that you may have heard, that sometimes we have to go slow so that we can go fast. And I really feel like 2023 was that for us, that we've really spent that intentional time for building what these teams should look like, who should be on them, how we should organize ourselves, how we should report to one another, how we communicate with one another, and really building those structures to help be in place so that we can just jump from there and springboard to putting actions into progress. That doesn't mean we haven't been implementing actions, but I do see that some of those actions that we haven't started yet that will be getting underway in short order if they aren't already. So we'll continue to look at funding streams because they continue to come at us from a variety of different places. We also, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be hearing as different divisions are building their budgets, you may be hearing recommendations or requests for additional staffing as part of that budget conversations this year as well. And we're looking, we are working very hard on ensuring that we have that accountability to our commitments, especially about how we report to you all, but also how we report publicly on our work. A lot of folks are very interested on what the council is doing around climate and how we are making a difference in our own operations, which, as Jeff had mentioned, have a pretty big impact in the region because we are a big energy user, because we do drive a lot of vehicles, that they can have a very big impact in the region, and we're very visible. So we also want to be able to lead, as our Imagine 2050 goal says, we want to lead on addressing climate change. And so those are the types of activities we have underway so far, and we really see us being able to continue to advance those operational efforts and continue to learn and be a part of those regional conversations about how we bring more partners together to really accelerate and advance and learn from one another in all of our work. And I mentioned this earlier, there are a lot of staff from the council, and we really are in all of this together. So far in all of our work teams, these are the team members that are involved, and it's very small because there's a lot of team members involved. But I do just want to thank everybody who is listed on this slide for all of their work and their contributions to standing up and doing work differently. For some team members, this is their first step into this work. For other team members, they're really excited to lead because they've been waiting for this. And we're just really excited for those enterprise-wide work teams that we have and just how much our teams had expressed when we were kicking off and bringing these groups and standing up these work groups together at our first kickoff meeting. We asked the participants, well, what do you think? What do you need going forward? Or what would you like to see from us as a coordinating team? They said, we'd love it if you bring us together more often, because they really liked hearing what other parts of the council were doing and learning from their colleagues in other work units and other divisions. So we're really excited for that energy in this work. And in addition to team members that are listed on this slide, we know we have a lot of team members who implement climate work every day as a part of their activity, as a part of their everyday work and action. And while they may not be on a work team, that doesn't mean they aren't contributing to all of the efforts that that we've been reporting on here at the in our presentation at the council. So I also just wanted to share that we have a one-pager that we had shared with you as well that we wanted to kind of sum up everything, because we know this is a lot of details in here, and we would love if you have any advice for other things that you'd like to see from us or other types of reporting or monitoring you'd like to see. We're happy to take that and continue to evolve our metrics and tracking as we're going forward too. And really thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Lisa, and your whole group. We'll open up for questions, comments. Any?
Mr. Chair?
Judy?
I just got to tell you, I thought this is one of, again, a lot of great presentations here at my council, but this is really so well done. And I can just appreciate the expertise behind this and how well you're coordinating. Good hires. And, even just when I walked in, I'm like, as a council member, this is so good. I'm starting my file folder of things that I want to be able to take out and share and talk about. I can't get into the depths of understanding what you guys do, but it's so important that we can help be, I think, another way to convey the hard work that's going on here and the impact that it will have on the region. More of this is great. We got another one earlier this week, which is also great. So that, I just want to applaud you for your work. This, again, as we are working on the 2050 Imagine plan, I'm super excited. I had no idea what was already going on. So super excited that feels really right and tight and that it's coming together. So thank you for your hard work.
Gail?
I just wanted to say, last week at the committee of the whole, I thought also was one of the best meetings that I've attended. I mean, I've been here just a year and I've attended a lot of meetings, and this pulls back into the climate action and the environmental justice and what I think the divisions are trying to do and the council are trying to do are really being where we need to be, and that's bold, and to embed this across and get everybody talking and engage the public and really reach out to everybody. And it's a lot of hard work from the staff, but we need to share in that responsibility of taking our message collectively to our communities and to our people who want to know about it, and just really start talking about it. Because of everything I hear now, everybody's really wants to know. Everybody's talking about the communities, the city councils. And so the more information you can, give us a link and say, print this or take this, or here's your talking points, that would be huge. But this is really like the timing couldn't be better for pulling this all together. So thank you to everybody.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember, and thank you for mentioning give us a link, because it reminded me that I was meant to share with you that we will have a link to share with you, because we do want to publicly report that, as I mentioned earlier. I think by the end of the week, our climate action work plan page will be updated with the information that you have as well, and some of the things that are on your one pager, as well as having that one pager too, if you want to print off additional copies, or if you'd like additional copies, we're happy to get those for you too.
Thanks.
Dolgar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question, but I want to first start by just saying thank you. Peter knows this. A lot of groups are just like wanting to work on climate actions, and they were watching for what the states will do. And a lot of groups were waiting for Met Council to take action. So this is really, really good. The question I have is around the environmental justice principles. So you said you're incorporating it, and I just skimmed through the action plan. Would you mind just going a little bit more detail and contextualizing how will it show up as policies and decisions in the way the council members should expect in our individual committees?
Do you want to take it? Why don't you start? You've been on the playbook, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Councilmember. I would say, I think maybe I'll let Lisa take the committee portion of the question. But in terms of the principles themselves of environmental justice, we're using a few different approaches in the playbook work that I'll just elaborate on a little bit. One is looking at community engagement approaches and what does reciprocal and co-creative community engagement look like when we do our climate work. So that's one component of it. Also looking at outcomes and how we measure success of environmental justice. Is this actually doing what we intended it to do? And then also looking at our data processes and the data that we have already available, whether it's from a national source or from qualitative data through engagement, and how we can leverage those existing resources and pull them together with our existing processes, so that, like Lisa was saying, from the beginning, there's an understanding of environmental justice in some of these processes. So I hope that answers some of the question with some of the principles.
Could I do a follow-up, Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And that's what I saw when I sort of quickly reviewed the action plan. Like, I saw a lot around engagement. I saw power sharing. I saw consultation. My encouragement is if we could pull and refine what we actually mean by environmental justice further. And here's like a couple of concrete examples I can give, right? There's the environmental justice principles around engagement and co-decision making, and then there's the distributed resources, so distributed justice. And the way council functions, that's where I think we can play the most role. And the concrete steps are, when I think about affordable housing that council runs, every one of them could be electrified. And so what does that look? So getting more refined in that way. And when I think about data that you have, that should come as a policy, not as a policy decision, but as one of the factors that could play into the policy decisions we make in community development when we think about how we're awarding grants and what it means for the new buildings that are coming alive and what type of funding could be utilized for actually the electrification and density, right? So that's the other one I'm thinking. And then if I want to further refine it, you can take that pollution data or cumulative data, overlay that with low income, and then say, if you're electrifying buses, every fleet should start there and then work your way up. So there's different ways to play around it. And I really do appreciate the engagement because I think that's where the state government has really lacked. But engagement is one, outcomes, you're not going to get it without that distributed resources. And I think that is where I'm hoping, like maybe it's tighter group of both in collaboration with community groups could really define what we mean by environmental justice. Because I think it is very true. You're one of the first. City of Minneapolis have written their climate action plan as climate equity plan. It's not even a climate plan anymore. So I think you're one of the few municipals and government entities that is really at the forefront of this work, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
I would thank you, Council Member, for your comments on that, and it actually reminds me of some of the work that we're doing in our climate pollution reduction grant that the EPA is funding. You might recall that we brought both a recent grant application request to you all to seek Phase 2 implementation grants for equitably decarbonizing residential structures across the region. And the operationalization of environmental justice in that is by identifying community benefits, not just mitigating harms. And in that particular grant application, we were looking at prioritizing, in particular, decarbonizing homes in low-income and disadvantaged communities using the federal data around pollutants and where they occur and overlaying that with the low-income households that the federal government has defined as that prioritization effort. But I think it's a really good way for us to, as we're continuing to work on the comprehensive climate action plan that we have EPA funding to complete for the 11-county region, that next step in that work as we continue to do engagement and build out those strategies is to prioritize strategies around community benefits and co-creating solutions with community and really putting that into practice. So we'll be in front of you more as we continue to evolve our practice in that and building out those climate plans. And as we're thinking about then how we embed this in our own work, we're hoping to learn from those activities where we're already kind of told what we need to do, and learning from that, and then putting that and applying those learnings to our everyday actions too, not just when we have grant funding.
You know, in that respect, Lisa, this is the first presentation I now kind of have a much better idea that this climate action plan, which I always thought was more internal about our own footprint, so to speak, but it really does inform and help this larger mission of really leading the region with the tools that we've developed that really spread out beyond just our own work, but the climate of the entire region. So, and obviously the equity piece that Dilkar has pointed out, but that's very exciting, and I sense this is just the beginning. Right. Any others? Well, thank you, all three, and everyone who's been involved. Clearly, there's a lot of names on that list, so it's really good to see how that also includes the entire council and all divisions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
But we're not done. We're going to hear from the Equity Advisory Committee year-end summary, and I know that John and others, Tony, who are involved in this work, will have a chance to help with this presentation, but Leila, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Chair, Council members, and colleagues. I'm Lila El-Tawili. I'm the Council's Enterprise Equity Senior Manager. I lead the Equity Implementation Unit in the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, and we support one of many things. We support the Equity Advisory Committee. We came today to give an update on all of our work from 2023, or to give a quick overview on all of the work that's been happening in that group. So we want to go over, I apologize here. I want to go over membership and vacancies, the purpose of this presentation, EAC's role and their impact on the council, achievements and wins, acknowledging challenges and areas for improvement, key initiatives to address moving forward, some support and some things that we're evaluating for membership, and then also, again, highlighting EAC's impact on the council. So starting out, These are our current members. We have 4 council members, Councilmember Pacheco, Councilmember Carter, Councilmember Lee, and Councilmember Osman. The EAC is a 21-member committee made up of both geographic seats and at-large seats. The folks on the committee come from all walks of life, many different racial, ethnic identities, genders, abilities or disabilities, professions, and lived experiences. The year-end summary presentation is a review and a reflection on the progress and achievements the Equity Advisory Committee made throughout the year. It identifies and celebrates successful initiatives and wins that have positively impacted the council. We want to acknowledge and address areas of improvement and failures, as we said before, and outline some of the next steps. Highlight the importance of the EAC's impact on decision-making processes. Just listening to the climate action plan, I think the EAC can certainly provide some feedback and advice on some of those areas if they come to the EAC. Provide a comprehensive overview of strides and challenges and concerns faced by the council and the EAC. Emphasize the significance of membership diversity and stakeholder support in advancing equity initiatives, and foster collaboration, feedback, engagement from stakeholders to drive continuous improvement and progress within the council. So the role of the EAC is to provide valuable advisory and recommendations on projects and programs from an equity perspective. This is really the bulk of the work. We've done quite a bit on really being able to focus on the advisory aspect of the EAC and being able to pull out those equity perspectives from all of the folks on the committee. Advocates for fair and just policies and practices within the council. This is an area that the EAC is very interested in, looking into additional, policies and practices that they can provide input on. And it raises awareness and educates stakeholders on equity, diversity, and inclusion issues from their communities. And so we always look at the EAC as, rather than going out to community, we bring them here, and then they bring in all of those things from their communities that we may not necessarily have access to on a regular basis. But the folks who come every month, every third Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m., they are very dedicated to being able to bring those here to the council. And then the importance of the EAC's impact on the council is that they suggest initiatives for promoting equity within the council. There have been many times where folks have pointed something out or shared something that we just didn't consider or didn't even think about. And so that is something that has, I think, had a lot of presenters go back and reevaluate what they may have brought in front of the EAC. It enhances diversity and representation in decision-making process. I always say, these are the dedicated, passionate people who come in here every third Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. because they're passionate, because they want to share their perspectives and their opinions and share in the decision-making process. And it contributes to a healthy ecosystem and culture of equity and community engagement within the council. The EAC is one important piece, I think, that, again, helps us with that overall system. All right, some of the achievements in 2023, the EAC made recommendations and provided feedback on a total of 19 Met Council presentations, everywhere from human resources, regional development, affirmative action, transit, environmental justice, on small business, and more. They helped enhance the affirmative action dashboard by providing some feedback on the visuals and data representation. They always ask us to disaggregate, which we try to do as much as possible. They made a request for the equal opportunity audit. So back in 2022, they wanted to have an audit evaluate all of our work across the entire council. At that time, of course, that would have been a very large project, but that led to what is now the Small Business Equity Audit, where we are now evaluating and assessing our small business contracting work. We are currently in the process of that. I'm the assigned project manager. we're also, during the day, leading small business equity audit listening sessions. So they have been able to contribute to something that hopefully will lead to more small businesses having access to small business contracts here at the council. And then membership commitment to providing perspective to enhance equity at the council. All right, and so as they have provided some really amazing feedback and helped us make great enhancements to our projects and programs here at the council, we've also faced challenges. And some of those challenges are bylaws challenges. We've been in the process of updating our bylaws for quite some time. We're actually at the tail end of updating them, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a new copy of the bylaws. They haven't been updated since 2014, so we're looking forward to that. An improvement on attendance and loss of membership. We have been really struggling with making sure that folks are coming on a regular basis because, you know, a number of different challenges, but we are currently looking into that, but that has definitely been a challenge on the work. A lack of participation from departments, projects that work heavily in equity. We do not have a mechanism that really requires for all of the projects and programs that we all see to have to come to the EAC. And so a lot of times if the folks who are presenting don't automatically include the EAC in that work, it either gets missed or we as staff have to go out and look for it. And that means that we have to also know what's going on, which sometimes is a little challenging. And then a lack of implementation of advice on presentations given to the EAC. Sometimes they provide feedback and that's not always implemented, and we don't always know why. So that's been a challenge as well. And then to just continue, so some of the ways that we've been evaluating our internal staff. So not only are we looking at, you know, what's happening with the committee itself, we're also looking at us internally as well. And so we are looking at enhancing the role of council members to provide recommendations and advice that support the Equity Advisory Committee at the council level. We're evaluating how we can enhance this relationship, what we need to do in order to support the council members who are on the committee. Establishing more focused and dedicated internal support to better support the EAC's initiatives. That's us internally, the support team. How can we establish a more focused, you know, area or people who can, you know, dedicate their time to that? We are a very lean unit at this time, and so that also poses a challenge. Provide equity implementation unit staff with adequate support and resources and enhanced training to better assist the EAC. That also means that we need to be developed further so that we can better support the committee. And then changing the internal perception of the EAC, the added value and its importance and the impact, being able to really sell the idea of coming to the EAC every time there's a project. And so that's something that we need to work on as well. And then also increase awareness and encouragement within the council and the community surrounding the importance and visibility of the EAC. Not everyone knows what the EAC is, which is a little surprising to us because we do this work every day, but that's a reality. Not everyone knows who the EAC is. We put together a work plan for 2024. We looked at all of the work that happened in 2023 and 2022, also the committee's desire and what areas they have really wanted to focus on. And we've narrowed it down to about 4 different buckets. Of course, a lot of different things fit into these 4 buckets. One of them is the Regional Development Guide. That's something that they're very interested in providing feedback on and contributing in any way possible. The Small Business Equity Audit, which is obviously something that they've requested. And so they're really interested in being able to provide feedback in that area as well. And we're interested in also having their feedback because I think it will help us enhance this work. The Affirmative Action Plan, and then last, the Enterprise Equity Plan, which is something we're hoping we can start working on very soon. Highlighting some of their work from the past, some big initiatives or bodies of work that they've contributed to. They provided feedback for the Regional Development Guide, equity scenario planning, pilot private I&I grant program, the U.S. Water Alliance Equity Network, 2022 Service Equity Evaluation, FDA and Environmental Protection Agency Triennial Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Goals, and then Metro Transit Safety and Security Action Plans. All right, and lastly, just a quick summary and overview. The end of the year summary provides a comprehensive overview of the EAC's activities and achievements. We're currently filling vacancies at the time. We're actually at the tail end of that. Hopefully at the next meeting, the next committee of the whole meeting, we'll be able to submit some names. The EAC also plays a crucial role in providing recommendations, advice, and accountability to support council initiatives. They really, I think, hold us accountable to the words that we say, what we tell community, and then also to address some of the challenges and key initiatives to help support and enhance the EAC. And then continuous support and development to the EIU to support staff, to strengthen the EAC's impact on the council's equity goals, and then overall continuous improvement to the committee and the EAC member experience at the council. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. You've encapsulated a lot, both the amount of work that EAC has been doing and sometimes behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and I know that's one of the challenges that you've outlined really well that we're working on. And it's come a long way, but what I'm aware of, it really kind of lay out and there's work and conversations to kind of bring it even more engaged and to the next level. And Councilmember Vento.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Lila. I think it would be a great idea for there to be a conversation with the climate action folks with regard to the environmental justice piece. Just seems to be a natural link.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that. And Councilmember Pacheco, correct me if I'm overstepping my bounds.
Oh, no.
Thank
No.
you.
Councilmember Dolkar.
Totally had her.
Oh, you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I misheard, but I heard you say a lot of the recommendations that are coming out of the committee is not being implemented by the council. That is a little bit concerning to me because we do ask a whole lot of constituent groups and groups that sit on committees. And this does happen often, having worked in government before, where individuals will say, yes, I'm on the committee, but I know I'm there to just fill the role because nothing I do actually matters. Wow. So this committee, I would like to see all the recommendations that are not implemented and actually know from the directors why they were not implemented. This is very concerning to me. That's my first one. I'm actually a little bit alarmed by it because this work has been going on a lot longer than just this administration. So that's concerning. I said the word concerning a couple of times, so you can tell how concerning this is. Because I don't want individuals who are signing up their names, and I don't want this to happen to any of our advisory committees that are there, tag, where they feel like they don't have the authority to actually make recommendations. So I would like to see that change. To the chair and the regional administrator to take a look at it and look at the recommendations that were not implemented. Unless there's a huge cost or a massive change in the way council is functioning, like those should be low-hanging fruit. The second thing I have is more of a recommendation that a request that I put in front of Councilmember Pacheco as the chair of this committee. I did want us to so I'll verbalize it as a request to all of us, and for this to come back to the council as recommendations. For this committee to actually look at what are the things that we can currently do within council processes to actually strengthen MCUB DBE goals. What I'm seeing, and which I see a lot of that in Transportation Committee, is that we will get a lot of sole source cooperative agreement, a number of other ways of council doing businesses that are actually missing DBE and MCUB goal. And so And knowing where the state agencies are at, which is the Department of Administration, MMB, and the work, knowing sort of having insights into how they have been implementing some of those policies, I think the council may be a little bit further behind compared to those agencies. So I would like this committee to just take a look at it and see what we can do to strengthen it. Not saying we're not doing it, we're absolutely doing it, but I think we may be a little bit behind compared to other state agencies. And I can narrow that request when I get a chance to actually put it in the writing. Thank you.
Right, that's fair, thank you. Councilmember Carter.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to register in. I want to first acknowledge Councilmember Pacheco and the work that he has been doing and say thank you very, very much. I think that Councilmember Pacheco has been working with staff, and thank you, Lila, very much, and the leadership there has been working to refine the knowledge, both of the committee and of our organization, of the critical partnership that can be represented by the EAC. As we look at the fact that it is connected to everything, much like climate, it can be very, very easily connected to nothing. And I know that we're coming out of a process of pandemic, and I know that this committee has met consistently even through pandemic and in person, and now is in that period of time not having looked at but not having confirmed bylaws. So really wanting to make certain they're functioning in a purposeful role and looking back at those organizing documents to make sure that it links to what we need as a council, because it is very important that they're not just meeting and hearing presentations, a good number of presentations, and giving feedback and wondering. So I'm very, very pleased with a work plan that has come to us recently that does focus on a smaller number, although, the small number involves many things, our regional development guide, and finding that the EAC is a place for organizing, really centering the community engagement aspects of developing the regional development guide. No, EAC cannot be everything and should not be everything where community engagement is concerned, but it should not be either or either, where community engagement happens here and there and everywhere and doesn't link up somewhere. So I think it's really important for us to think as we're entering the 60% phase, and I'm pontificating, but I also really believe this is very important, that we think about how we use the EAC as a place to help center that engagement. And by center, I don't just mean get it and count that over anything or more than anything, but really just understand, how we're synthesizing community engagement around equity, where the regional development guide is concerned. And again, that's very big. It does require that we lock in on our goals, together as we're working with the different areas, and we'll have to be very purposeful about that. So I'm saying that and thanking staff for organizing this work plan and bringing it back to us. I also very much appreciate your concern. I think we have a great opportunity. So we, have a chance to turn that concern into a place where we are using this critical participation and sometimes tension, of community to advance our work. And I'm looking very, very forward to that. Again, thanking Councilmember Pacheco and other council members at the table with us there, looking forward to focusing on these 4 elements that will be a part of the work plan, but also having a clear understanding of how that information comes, how it's processed together with EAC members as community, and synthesized together with other community engagement, and then how we understand what actions happen together with our council moving forward. It's an iterative process, and I look forward to actually being able to center that engagement around equity, which should have every ability to help power us forward. Thank you again for this work and report.
Thank you, Councilmember Carter. Councilmember Chambliss, then Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you also to the Equity Advisory Committee for all of your commitment and your work and your passion towards equity goals. I'm curious about the change with the bylaws and what the goals and the actions to increase in attendance and how the Equity Advisory group and their work can be set up for success in achieving the goals that they want to achieve and ensuring that their recommendations are considered and that they are able to collaborate with our organization and get the follow-up when they make the recommendations. Where does that information go? I know the bylaws are set up to, basically a certain way, maybe in terms of participation, the number being consistent with the districts. And how is that working, or how do we have backup so that, we don't have attendance fatigue? Basically setting them up for success. If there is something that is being evaluated in terms of the structure or the bylaws, I'm curious about, how that can be reconfigured so that they are successful, and also looking at where are the gaps so that we can take a look at, where the recommendations are, getting a response in terms of what's feasible, what's not feasible, et cetera. In terms of their capacity is also what's feasible in terms of how we collaborate together and how we achieve the outcomes. So I don't know if there's a response to that.
Sure.
Absolutely, Chair. Councilmember Chambliss, thank you for the question. We are actually in the process of evaluating all of those things internally. How do we follow the feedback given, right? And how do we create an organic feedback loop, right? The challenge with attendance is there's definitely attendance fatigue, for sure. There's also the challenge with, after meeting online for COVID, we were in person, and then folks wanted to meet online and hybrid, and so updating the bylaws is really important so that we can start meeting online, especially for subcommittee work. Subcommittee work will provide the space to do that additional, the additional focus and work that we're looking for and that they want to provide at this time. So there are multiple things I think that we're evaluating is what does a good structure look like? And if we talk about structure, we don't want to sacrifice, there are very specific ethnicities and identities that the bylaws actually call out. So we want to make sure that the structure also includes all the folks who should actually be at the table. So just more evaluation needs to happen. And then we also have enhanced our orientation process, which we will have orientation next month for new members. We are planning a retreat as well to help onboard, not just the new members, but, everyone who maybe has been here for a while but needs a little bit more developing and updating. And then for us, again, as staff, where do we need to develop and what connections do we need to make internally in order to bring those things to the EAC and enhance it as well?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to appreciate everything that's been said. And Lila, I really appreciate the energy and passion and structure you're bringing to this. So for people that are newer to the council, and again, this predates me, and I was a liaison to the EAC at one point, and I was very frustrated, and I could see why they'd be frustrated because I was on the management committee, not chair at the time, but I would see the work that we were doing as it was relating to our MCAP goals and DBE and all of that. And I would say to myself, well, this would be great to get even just the presentation over to the equity committee so they could understand some of the work that we're doing and the policy changes we're trying to strive for that would impact those numbers. And then I really had hoped that we could show them some of the progress we were making, but have feedback as it relates to, again, how to increase more participation for the small businesses and so on and so forth. So, and I was a council member asking for things, and I felt at times it was just very awkward or frustrating to get that connection back to council and some of the work that we were doing. So I'm hoping, and I see some of those frustrations are still there. And I'm just going to be really frank. I just think that there was a point in time that there was like, the EAC was like, well, do we really matter? And when I still hear that there's no intentional mechanism, I'm paraphrasing, to take their interest or their review, their perspectives, advice, and to incorporate it into our work, that bothers me. And as chair of management, that bothers me because there's a huge intersection certainly in the management committee of the work that we're trying to do. So I will say though, with all of the concerns that I share, I do see though, this is a step forward because I would tonight must be, or this week must be the, week of best presentations, because I don't think I've even had an overview of what the EAC is doing that is this thoughtful and comprehensive and respectful of a group of people that are giving a lot of their time and talents. So this is helping to advise me. I want to thank Councilmember Pacheco, Councilmember Carter, others that serve as council members to this group, and the time that you're putting in on it. And the guide plan that we're working on for 2015, everything that we've been hearing about is about equity. And yet we've got this group that has been sitting there kind of on a tether without really the connective tissue or the dots throughout this organization, where instead of thinking, oh, we didn't really think about asking the EAC, well, on the presentation we had earlier where there were flags now that we're calling them, placed in points where we have to say to ourselves, oh, a pin is put here, a flag is put here. That means that we need to think about equity in this work. So I am just, I don't know how long I'm going to be on this council, but we are the most diverse council. And if we don't get this right now, shame on us, because we have the power to work through our regional administrator and help figure out what this thing is that's causing a breakdown or a misfire or whatever you want to call it. I just want to, appreciate all the people that have served, but yeah, I'd get burned out too if I felt like, they're not even understanding the work that we're doing, or we're not including them in some of it to get their advice. I will also say sometimes recommendations that do come from committees are not fully accepted or at all sometimes, just based on some of the things that you've mentioned, Councilmember Joe Club, but they certainly deserve a full review of why or why not. And sometimes it's just a not now. And they deserve that. So I just hope we can break through this, because I couldn't remain on the committee because of my time commitments. And now we've got great council members leading it, and Councilmember Pacheco can speak to his leadership on it. And he brings it up in management. I'm grateful for Councilmember Pacheco's role in management, because he is driving home a lot of this as it relates to MCOB, DBE, and opportunities that we haven't even really pursued, I think, when it comes to small businesses in the region. So with that, I just want to say this is still a work in progress, but I'm seeing with your leadership on this and being very frank with us tonight about what needs to happen, we need to meet them where they're at and try to make it a change so that we get people that feel very energized in their partnership with us. And I don't want to utilize the group. I don't want, I want to partner with the group. So thank you, Lila, for your work.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. And there's themes of a history of frustration, but some progress. Really good conversation. Chair Pacheco.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think, first of all, I'd like to kind of set the definitions here. I mean, right now, you're here getting a presentation on the Equity Committee, not equity, not the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, which has a bigger role. So they have this dollars spent, the hiring we're doing, our policies. This is an equity presentation, not, again, what everything's doing. It's like having the climate come here and just give us their emissions and not what they're doing across the board. So we got to be clear of what the expectation is of this advisory committee and what the role is and what they do, what they don't do. I mean, and I'm, came from the diversity committee 30 years ago. 30 years ago, when Burbridge was governor, and went before the diversity committee, before I was appointed. And so the diversity committee actually recommended who would be appointed to the as council members. So that role was different than it is today. And so I just want to be real clear, let's level set where we're talking about, because we can't put all the equal opportunity, the purchasing, the procurement, everything on the Equity Advisory Committee at this point. So that's one thing. The other is that, and I gotta tell you, I love the climate presentation because I love the way it's integrated across, and I think we talked about that. And because years ago, again, there was no climate report. So you come at it without the, I don't know, call it baggage, but you come at diversity thing without the history. And we've been battling this forever. And so I wish I could start fresh. I wish I could say, we're here and here's where we're going to be. So that's what I like about that. And the metrics that you're using, we have those metrics. We know what we're spending. We know what we're hiring. We know the kind of work that's being done there. We don't put it together well. And so that's the first thing. The second is that, you know, as we went through, we've had members who aren't showing up. We have a 21-member committee, and we have 5 people that show up on a regular basis. And people have applied. And so now we went out there. One of the bylaw changes I recommended was go from 21 to something more manageable. But they're still being looked at in the bylaw as a bylaw. This is an advisory committee, so we can look at maybe even hybrid. I mean, 6 to 8 once a month is a lot. And even then, we don't have any of the committees because we don't have the members. And even with our own council members, we need interaction and a better role for them, because they could show up like I show up, but without a real specific role, because a lot of them are new too that came here. So I think our own council members, the team I have now is a great team, and I'm really looking forward. I will tell you this though, but why I'm even excited about doing this is that I interviewed at least 8 to 12, I think 12 now, candidates for this advisory council, and they were great. Yeah. They came with passion, they came with a diverse representation, just skill sets. So I'm excited about having new people there. I'm excited about the possibility of doing an advisory, a subcommittee. Because if you miss one meeting, you're down 2 months. And all you're doing is waiting for someone to bring you a paper so you can grade it. And so there's got to be a way that we look at a better role of what we're expecting even from our own members in these advisory committees. I'm excited as well because I'm waiting for small business evaluation.
The small business equity.
I looked at the RFP before it was sent. It was sent out almost a year ago now, and so things have taken a little long for me as well. And as a head of a chamber, there was some great information that we'll get from this. What are the barriers? How do people feel that we're doing, whether it's purchasing or working with small business? We started out today having a presentation from small business. And we have that almost every way. Every committee has some small business issue that we really haven't defined. It's kind of like until we get to the anti-displacement or something, do we have small business that we engage? They come here and get 3 minutes, but there's a role that we have in all of that as well. And so small business has not been there, so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about not doing the bylaws, but really looking at how we create those metrics going forward. And I got to tell you, Councilmember Johnson said, we are the most diverse committee that's ever sat here. You can just look up the line of chairs over here to give you a sense of where we've been. And so, where we're going is for us to define. And again, I think we have, I've talked to a number of council members who said, John, can you look at this or do this? And I said, yeah, I'm trying. I think that, but where we're running into is the same as the climate as well. So we need dedicated staff for some of this. Yes. And when someone leaves, it takes a year to replace somebody around here. And so I think we really need to look at how we define that, because we can't expect to do the same thing and add more things. So I think the next time we have a presentation like this, it will be from the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, and it will have metrics for where we're measured across the board, not just as an advisory committee. We're putting too much on their shoulders. So that's what I'm saying. I'm excited about where we're going. I've had some great input from council members. I've had some great input from staff. We're just coming together, though, and I think as you'll see over the next couple months here, once we get this other thing done as well. But I think you'll see some of the metrics, because and bottom line is, I want you to know that I know staff's listening, I'm listening, and I know we'll be able to metrics it, because if we build it inside, we could take it outside. And that's what you were saying about the other departments or government entities. We should be competing on that. And more importantly is that we represent a lot of cities, counties, and others that don't have the resources we have, and they're struggling with the same thing. If we do ours well, we should be a consultant to them. We should provide them the services that we have, because we have the resources. We may not have all the staff, but we have the resources. And so I think that's I guess my message today is that I appreciate the work that they're doing, and I really, because I know you're struggling at times, especially on staff, and they show up and they do the work. And so, and with the commitment of the board and the new regional administrator, you have a history in some of this, and so I'm really looking forward to joining you as well as we go forward on this. And Council Member Carter and I have been talking about what the plan look like and stuff. So I'm listening. I think we all are listening. I think we do have the opportunity to really make a difference in this area.
John, thank you so much. I really appreciate those words, and that really, I mean, and actually even the level of your energy on this issue, I mean, it's really, it's inspiring. And you know, it gives me kind of more hope about this EAC than we've had for a number of years. Deb has a comment, and then I'm going to ask Ryan to give his perspective, because not to put you on the spot, but you're the RA, I think, so we're going to get a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine's very brief, so thank you for your passion and leadership, and really also the clarification of roles and expectations of what is part of OEO versus EAC, and what are the roles, because I think that sometimes becomes hard of what should go to the EAC. So I think one of my recommendations is each standing committee has every year develops a work plan, and I think that maybe the division leader should go present the work plan and to the EAC, and then we can also sort of gauge where they see interest or where they see some of the cross-cutting themes that maybe because we're focused on our areas, we miss. And I think something like that might be good, and it's a way to also get the leadership in front of EAC at least once a year from each of the divisions and all of that, just almost to help kind of open up communications and get an idea. Because can't look at everything, but what are the interests that really that they have, that they see that can impact and make a change? Because if you're doing all that time on a committee, you want to make a change. So where can that happen? So those just be my recommendation.
Thanks.
Good one.
Good idea. Ryan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And council members, all who have spoken or who have not, but I know also care about this as well. A couple of thoughts. I'm sitting on my hands in a little bit as we were going, because I could have made comments after each one. So I both want to say, like, I hear and recognize many of the themes that you're raising, and I appreciate the chair's level set. We meet next Wednesday, and we're going to rehash that conversation over an hour of fun before the meeting. So if we come a little tired, that's why, because we had a good time. But there are two dynamics I would just raise. One is, how do we think about equity work across the organization internally? And Councilmember Pacheco laid that out, as well as how do you specifically think about the work of the EAC? But you should also be thinking about other engagements we have with community groups. We had young people in here a few weeks ago talking about your regional development guide, et cetera, et cetera. There's an ecosystem theory of the case of how you want to approach that work and how this body understands that coming together. That's something we can figure out how to put together and bring before you. I would ask for a little time as I'm talking to members who sit on the EAC first, and hopefully at some point get to hear from committee members who serve on that advisory committee as well. That's something we're working on. That helps level set. And then we'll come back with a policy idea of how do you put a structure and framework together. And then on the ground, I mean, no one has all the answers here. I've experienced both challenging and good moments of this work in different places in my own career, as many of you have as well. And what I would say is part of the issue right now, I would guess, is not that every area hasn't been implemented. It's that I can't tell when I'm being heard and the things that I want to have prioritized are even mattering. And how do I know when I'm making a difference? Because I'm giving up time to come to this work. And that's shared at times from both staff and outside members, right? And council members, frankly, who go to these committee meetings as well. There needs to be mechanisms both through the EAC and outside of it, where, to Councilmember Barber's point, committees have conversation back and forth with an important advisory committee. We can do that. We have structures and we can build structures to do that. As well as we need to also think of the reverse, which is how do we come not with an agenda, but with our ears open to listen to what community members may have as their agenda. So it becomes a co-creation space in the right way that works. And so it's a lot of words, but I think between structure and process, with some further conversation here, we can level set that. And there's a lot of wisdom in the words that others spoke. So thank you for the guidance. We'll keep working at it and we'll come back with some additional updates here that hopefully knit this together. And Lila, thanks for laying it out so clearly today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. R.A. And I don't know if anybody has a doctor.
I just want, so many people have spoken. Sometimes I feel like I'm taking additional time when I shouldn't, but it's something that's important. The work of the EAC is very important, and for me personally, I feel guilty because I'm not on it. But when I first came here, I said I wasn't going to spread myself out too thin because I wanted to be effective. But effectiveness, and you don't even know what the reality of the entity is an elusive thing. But I pledge that going forward, I do, even though I'm not on the EAC committee, I want to try to give some time up and maybe attend some meetings because I've done a lot of work in the past in diversity and also human resources. So that's where my guilt comes from. But we all have to put a drop in the bucket. And I just think going forward, we need to put more drops in this particular bucket, and then it'll fill up. And so, and I think we're headed in that direction. So it just pained me to hear that they were making recommendations that weren't being followed up on. So that means there weren't accountability factors. And accountability factors have to be built in. And if those things aren't followed up, then there has to be a conversation about why and then how we're going to correct that. So we have to be authentic in what we're doing, or we shouldn't even be here. So, and we have a lot of brilliant people on this council, and I'm reminded of that every time I come here, and I'm thankful to be here, and I'm hoping that, going forward, this is going to get corrected. It's like your car needs service, so this needs to be serviced, and I'm confident that it will be.
Appreciate those comments, absolutely. We've had a robust meeting and some great conversations. And Sue, you get the last word.
I don't want to have the last word.
Well, you get a word.
I want to make note of two important things that happened today. First is the EPA has issued a very strong ruling as it relates to forever chemicals, which includes the PFAS. There are others that I had never heard of that I'm going to have to study up on, but it's a really, really important ruling. And ironically, the state has identified 23 water sources, 11 in our metro area with PFAS. And it doesn't include some additional metro areas that I know of, i.e. townships that are dealing with it. So I think as we talk about 2050 and imagining 2050, we really need to be committed to imagining a 2050 that is without these forever chemicals that kill people. And there's been one prominent, I guess, notorious source that's often identified, but there are other sources, i.e. our Teflon pans, products used on our clothing, our carpeting, our umbrellas, products in our personal care items, makeup, shampoo. And I think we as a council play an important role in helping communicate not only the dangers, but how we can work together to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other reports, comments? The regional administrator, any?
Mr. Chair, I'll just mention two quick things. One, the regional development guide's in the middle of many, many meetings going out for planning for next, or sorry, not the regional solicitation process is out in the middle of many, Charles gave me the note and everything, I still got it wrong. Many regional things. The regional solicitation process is out, soliciting a lot of feedback from communities about how do we continue to improve, learn from the current process, et cetera. Thanks to everybody who's a part of it. They're all over the place throughout this region. If you have any questions, let me know, let Charles know. Councilmember Barber was in one of the many meetings recently, I know as well, so you could ask her. Secondly, Councilmember Johnson mentioned it earlier, but if you didn't see it, the chair shared with all of you a memo about sales tax sources and uses. It's a high-level snapshot, but it's an important snapshot to have, particularly as we're around toward the end of the legislative session. There are many questions that we've all been receiving, but a few of the questions are, how much of an operating deficit was the council truly carrying? And that answer comes out to almost $200 million on an annual basis if you look at that memo across bus and rail operations. The regional sales tax takes care of that. How much did the regional sales tax allow to alleviate funding from counties? And the answer there is about $50 million. There's a chart there that shows on an annual operating basis. How much does the sales tax raise annually? About $400 million. So before we start any other conversations, $250 million of the $400 million was just spent on really important parts of shoring up the system that exists in this region. The memo goes
Before we do anything new.
Right. And so before going into any other discussion, that level set has been really important this legislative session, and we thank legislators for asking us for it. There's a lot of conversation about what does the rest of that look like as we think about future assets, capital, maintenance and improvement, et cetera. That'll come before you all for a better policy discussion this summer. But in the meantime, hopefully that memo helps frame where we're at as best as we can, while also asking everyone that one more summer where the council can really establish policy and procedure will put us on a different footing as we move into next legislative session, where we can share an entire vision going forward that this council holds for that funding for the next 30 years. Thank you.
It's an exciting year, Judy.
And just briefly, so I have that piece in, and now I have this. And I think that if, not to get too far afield, but when we get these really good pieces that I like to have with me, because if I meet somebody or I'm out and about, or if I'm gonna go do a presentation, I've got some good stuff to already work with that we're all on the same page on, that's been kind of blessed by everybody here. So whenever something like that shows up, if it could land in community relations and sit as a link in a toolkit where we can access that depending on what we're talking about, that would be super helpful for us. I know Elias and Michael are doing great work, but just to have those pieces that are
The key pieces.
the key pieces that we can just grab and use and have the talking points ready to go, that would be super helpful for me. I mean, I had the luxury as a mayor of having talking points given to me all the time, and we would get those to the council so that if they were approached too. So I think this body, and to your point, Ryan, and even as it goes to the AC, we were talked about making sure that they knew, the AC members knew where they were in the process and how it would, that goes for all of us. There are things that are moving at a clip here, and I am fortunate enough to be the chair of management, so I serve in the leadership group, which is great because you kind of get this regular cadence of what's going on, and we can't, have everybody just showing up in meetings because we have open meeting laws, but there's got to be a way that people, as soon as something is ready to go, but maybe, again, ahead of it just being public, and those things are happening, but it can sit then in that toolkit again where we can have a reference instead of it sitting in a long email where we lose it, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I just to follow up on that 2 pages, that's really responding, A, to all the questions we're getting in the legislature, but 2, there's a way, I'm not being critical, but we kind of want to make it perfect. And this 2 pages is like, we're not finished, but this is what we know. Let's at least get that out there, and I think all of us can share that information.
And there's a map.
And there's a map, right, and there's a map. All right, General Counsel, anything?
Chair, nothing to report.
No, are you sure? Because we've all spoken. And
Well, if you want me to, I can say something.
You don't have to.
I think it was a committee of the whole meeting last week. We talked about compensation for advisory committee members and how important that is. We have had a bill up the legislature for the last year and a half. We just not have had any success on that.
Yeah, that's a really important point, that there's many good ideas we have. Sadly, we actually need to get the authority or the permission or the law to make some of those possible. So those aren't lost on us. Thanks. With that, great meeting. Thank you for your extra 10 minutes. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.